Hello and welcome to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Ruby. I'm a professional psychic medium, archetypal astrologer, priestess, and spiritual guide. All right, y'all. Today I want to talk about the goddess Sophia and how we are all Sophia. I woke up this morning just thinking about this in my mind. I had this intense urge to make content about Sophia. And of course, last night's full moon, the full moon in Cancer that was happening at the time that I'm filming this, we're still under the full moon in Cancer, is directly connected to the goddess Sophia. And so archetypally, I was feeling into something and tapping into something. So we're going to talk about Sophia's story, and we're going to talk about how Sophia's story applies to each and every one of us on the spiritual journey. So, the goddess Sophia's story, as we know her, comes from the Christian Gnostic tradition. But Sophia is also linked to the goddess Isis, to the Queen of Heaven. And I just have some unverifiable personal gnosis that Sophia has been around longer than Gnostic Christianity has. Sophia is the goddess of wisdom. And in her myth, Sophia exists in the Pleroma. What is the Pleroma? The Pleroma is the fullness of God. You can think of the Pleroma as the monad or Brahman from Eastern philosophy. And so Sophia, she's existing in the Pleroma as an aeon, and she makes a little mistake. She wants to experience her fullness, and she wants to connect in with the divine. So she engages in the act of creation, but without her divine counterpart, her syzygy. And so, because Sophia is in the act of creation without her divine counterpart, what she creates is the Demiurge. The Demiurge is a false creator. The Demiurge is a representation of our ego. And so the Demiurge believes that he is the true creator and becomes this false god. He creates these archons, and the Demiurge and these archons become the false rulers of the earth. But Sophia's light remains present, though fragmented. And while Sophia falls into exile, higher divine powers intervene, and a plan of restoration through knowledge or gnosis is set in motion. So, the way this myth goes is that humanity is formed in such a way that Sophia's spark might awaken within us. And so, through revelation, through our own remembrance and awakening, we begin to recognize our own divine light, our Sophia light within herself. And when we are in remembrance of Sophia, when we begin to orient ourselves as Sophia, there is restoration. And so the return of Sophia is a return that comes through the integration of ourself. And through this myth, we understand that all of us carry a spark of Sophia. All of us carry a divine spark, a spark of divine wisdom. Now, let's talk about how Sophia's story mirrors and maps the story of our own evolution of consciousness. Now, in the beginning, Sophia exists in the Pleroma, in the fullness of God. This is us before human incarnation. This is us before we come into a human body to individuate. And it's the soul before embodiment. So before we come into embodiment, when we are in this unity consciousness state, before ego differentiation, we are Sophia at the beginning of her story, connected to the Pleroma. Then we incarnate. And why do we incarnate? Well, if we have the same motive as Sophia, We have a desire to know. We have a desire to individuate. We have a desire to discover. And so Sophia's movement begins with a desire to know directly. And there's so many different versions of the myth of Sophia's descent. But there's just this sense that Sophia isn't descending because she's disobedient or sinful, but because of the impulse to individuate. And psychologically, this is our soul's choice to experience than to maintain abstract. This is our desire to come into human form, to come into Earth school. This is the beginning of ego formation. Why we come here is to discover and to individuate. Sophia's error is not moral punishment. It is uncontained descent. She rushes into density without the grounding or the structure or the body to hold her magnitude, and the result is fragmentation. Now, we can see this portion of Sophia's story mirrored in the human experience. My, first aha moment was that it's the time of birth. Stanislav Grof has done so much work with the perinatal matrices using holotropic breathwork to take people back to their birth experiences. And for many people, the experience of being born is essentially the first trauma. But of course, we can also see this part of Sophia's story mirrored in shocks to the nervous system, in trauma, loss, and disorientation, in times when we are shocked out of a place of fullness or wholeness because we've been rushed into something without the necessary containment to hold it. Now, from Sophia's fragmentation arises the false god, the Demiurge, and his archonic forces. Now, symbolically, the Demiurge represents the survival mind, the ego, the part of us that seeks to control. More benignly, we could see the Demiurge as the manager self. And while some specific Gnostic streams characterize the Demiurge as evil, other Gnostic streams more characterize the Demiurge as ignorant. And when we're taking this story and we are applying it to our own journey of evolution, I do think that the Demiurge serves less as an evil force and more as an ignorant authority. We suffer spiritually when we think the ego or the survival mind is the only God. We orient ourselves only to that part of us. And the Demiurge really, in this I am the only God type stance, this is exactly how the ego functions when we're cut off from our deeper knowing. So Sophia in Exile is us run by our ego, run by our survival mind. In moments, we might have these glimpses of our Sophia presence, of our divine spark, but we haven't yet cultivated the attainment to fully relate or orient ourselves from that place. Now, after the Demiurge is created, Sophia goes into exile, but that doesn't mean she disappears. She becomes immanent. So something else this myth is speaking to is the non-dual nature of reality. Divinity is not only transcendent, but it is immanent. It is all around us. This is what Christ is referring to when he says the kingdom of heaven is among you or within you or in your midst. Sophia is that kingdom. Her light is scattered and it's trapped in human form. It's scattered through sensation. It's buried in our heart. This is the soul inside incarnation. Now, in human terms, we can see this exiled Sophia presence as the wisdom that is often hidden behind our conditioning. We can see it as the wisdom that's present but it's veiled. And this is why Sophia is often seen mourning, weeping, veiled, calling from below. She is the soul that's remembering and waking up and shaking us and asking us to remember who we really are. So, how do we reintegrate our Sophia presence? How do we conceptualize for ourselves Sophia ascending and awakening within us? Well, the process of Sophia awakening within is the process of Gnosis. Gnosis is an inner revelation or an inner truth that sparks remembrance, realization, actualization. Gnosis is that just sense of knowing something is true from a deep place within. So, redemption of Sophia does not come from us escaping the world. It comes from us seeing clearly while we are in it. Now, this is where the Nous comes in. The Nous is a word that is featured in the Gospel of Mary. In the Gospel of Mary, Mary Magdalene and the Christ are having this dialogue. And Mary Magdalene asks the Christ, where do visions take place? Where do experiences of gnosis, of inner revelation and inner transformation take place? And Christ says, in the Nous. Now, we can translate Nous to the eye of the heart. When we begin to perceive from heart perception and not merely from a frazzled nervous system perception or a scattered, fragmented mental perception, that is when we begin to awaken and come into a relationship with our inner Sophia presence, with our inner Sophia Christ. Sophia awakens through perception, through embodied knowing, through recognition. This is very different from the dogma of more patriarchal Christianity that tells you that you have to obey and follow rules, submit to an external authority, and pledge yourself to an external savior. Really, Sophia teaches us that we are our own savior, and that is what the Gnostic Christians believed as well. They didn't believe that salvation came from saying a prayer to accept Jesus Christ as your spiritual authority. They believed that salvation came through this process of gnosis, this inner remembering, this inner revelation that leads to a realization of who you really are. And who are you really? You are Sophia. You are the divine spark. Now, Sophia's story is so important to the repressed feminine wisdom stream and the divine feminine mysteries, because Sophia's story tells us that ascent can only come after a process of descent. Wisdom returns upward only after being anchored downward. So when we are on this path, we don't need to abandon the body or destroy or shame the ego or escape the world. That is a more patriarchal, masculine way of entering into this Gnostic wisdom. Instead, the ego becomes in service to the soul. The body becomes a vessel, not a prison. In fact, we learn to work with the inherent spiritual energy that lives dormant in tandem with the physical body, the Kundalini, the serpent energy. We could even say the Kundalini energy, that Shakti, is an element of Sophia. This is resurrection consciousness. We descend from the Pleroma, we enter into a human vessel. That process of even entering into human incarnation creates a fragmentation. It creates a forgetfulness. And because we forget, we associate the ego with who we are. We worship the Demiurge because we have forgotten that we are more. We might have these glimpses of our inner wisdom, our intuition, our embodied spirituality, but they're veiled, they're repressed until we come into an experience of Gnosis, and that lived experience of revelation is where the ascent begins. So, why is Sophia's story the soul story? Because she descends by choice, she forgets through fragmentation, she suffers through misidentification, she awakens through perception, and she returns through integration. Now, every human nervous system reenacts this. We go from unity to differentiation, to overwhelm, to survival identity, to longing, awakening, and then integration. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Sophia's story is pretty cool. I can see how it is a roadmap for the evolution of consciousness, but how can I actually apply this to my life? And my answer to you is cultivate the inner Sophia within. Sophia is not just an external goddess from the Gnostic wisdom stream that we might come into a devotional relationship with, though we can. Sophia is the inner source wisdom, our intuition, our inner perceptions, our inner knowing. Sophia is the part of us that is divinity. When we do healing work on people, when we receive healing, when we feel at one with nature, we are connected to Sophia consciousness. And the more we build that connection and we build that relationship with Sophia, the more we ourselves move through a process of ascension. The descent is coming to earth. The descent is experiencing our karmic lessons. The descent is going into the shadow, going into those tricky emotional places, those trauma spaces, and witnessing them. But we're not meant to stay there. And so many of us get stuck in our healing process in the descent. We're working out some trauma, we're moving through some heavy emotion, we're moving through some heavy karmic burden, but nothing seems to be shifting. And it's because eventually there must be a reorientation into Sophia consciousness. So, a practical way to do this is to build that inner relationship with the self by coming into a place of receptivity. Sophia's voice, it's small, it's still, it's quiet. It's not in logic mind, it's in the heart, it's in the subtle shifts in our perception that sometimes can be easily missed. And so to cultivate that relationship of inner listening with the self is so key to begin activating our inner Sophia Christ. Now, our inner Sophia Christ is playful, it's Shakti, it's Kundalini. And so by coming into inquiry, by coming into a place of presence and a place of compassion for the self, our Sophia naturally starts to arise within us. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And I also have a Patreon community where I go in depth, teach masterclasses on all sorts of subjects from Sophia Christ to Mary Magdalene to tarot and astrology. I also have full moon and new moon astrology readings and channel messages on the Patreon. So if you like this content, I hope to find you there as well. And as always, I am sending you love. I will see you soon.